Hi, this is Robert. Today's topic is going to be relationships with our brothers and sisters in our 70s. That's a very special relationship we have with our siblings. That's going to be the first thing we're going to be sharing. Second thing is, what about today? How are we getting along with our brothers and sisters? And we're going to do some examples of ones that work, relationships that work, and some that do not work. And why is that? What caused our relationships with our brothers and sisters to go off track, to not keep in touch, maybe to write somebody off, that sort of thing. And what changes in your 70s? I'm seeing some changes in our 70s, and are we kind of doing a reset? And then lastly, but not least, keys to better relationships, improving our relationships with our siblings, our brothers and sisters. Let's get started. Rediscovering old bonds. When you think about it in your 70s, your sphere of influence, your sphere of friends, I should say, gets smaller and smaller. Your safety net, that sort of thing, is smaller and smaller. And the best source of a new friend and somebody to join your support group may just be your sibling that you kind of lost touch with. Think about that. The bond goes way back. This is probably the longest relationship you've ever had of anybody still living. We go back to spend how many years in growing up? Well, some people, if they're the similar age, would spend like maybe 16 or 17 years together, and we did stick together. My brother recently told me that he remembers a time I defended him from a bully. So I don't remember that, but he does. So our relationships with our siblings goes way back. What about your relationship with your siblings today? How are you faring right now with your brothers and sisters? Are you getting along with them? Are you not getting along with them? Have you written anybody off? Are you just touch base when you have to, and that's it? Let's take a look at what's working, what's not working. I got some friends that really stay in touch with their siblings. A lady I walk with, she does a conference call every night. Her adult kids are invited, and her two sisters are invited. And that's like every day. We've got 3 sets of friends right now that are taking off on a sibling only holiday. It's mostly women, I think, that are getting these groups together. But we got 3 different friends who is taking a trip to the beach for a getaway just for the siblings. People that have good relationships with their siblings, they call each other, they text each other, they visit each other once in a while, they care about each other, and they share memories from the past. They're there for a support group. A lot of benefits for having good relationships, with your siblings. So examples of some not so good relationships includes a lot of us probably. I have good relationships. I shouldn't say us. I have good relationships with my 2 brothers. It hadn't always been that way, but it is now, and I'll tell you about it. People drift apart. They really do. You grew up with these people, and then one person maybe left home and took a job, and before you know it, you're not talking too often, and you kind of drift apart. Time and distance kind of takes its toll. So why do siblings drift apart? I got 3 reasons. Money. Yep, money. Um, a lot of times it's kind of like this. The parent cuts one of the siblings out of the will, and usually it's the one that's out of town, and the one that's local is included, and they get everything. We've seen that happen twice recently. And then guess what happens? The relationships between those 2 siblings is very bad. They don't talk to each other anymore. You may have a sibling that wanted to borrow money all the time. They borrow money, never pay back any money. And you just have, sooner or later, you have to, draw a line in the sand and say, sorry, I'm out. No more money. That's it. Cut them off. Tough love. Because a lot of them have addictions. Could be drinking, could be gambling, something like that. And, there's not enough money. They just want it money over and over again. And sooner or later, you find yourself kind of feeling like you are supporting their addictions. Religion and politics is another divider. They kind of go together sometimes. And of course, that's no surprise, right? The whole country is divided. You know, families are divided. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, that people actually write off each other because of politics. I mean, that happens. Another source of siblings drifting apart could be family members. I've got a friend, and he's got a brother that's in the same metro area, and they get along great. However, his wife and the brother's wife hate each other's guts, to say it bluntly, and they don't like each other. And so that puts a damper on things. But, often it's not one big event like that that's the cause of drifting apart. It's just, like I said, time and distance. And, you lose touch. Everybody has a busy life when they're working, especially. And, over time, if you don't get updated of what's happening in your brother or sister's life, you don't really have an interest and you don't really call them. Sometimes it gets into just touching base because you know you should. You don't really care, but you're touching base because you should. And what happens there? You go tit for tat. I call my brother this month. He calls me next month. I call him the next month, and then he doesn't call me. I'm like, it's his turn to call me. He's not calling me. I'm not going to call him either. And so there you go. That's the start of the divide. So sometimes these take years to play out, and by the time you get in your 70s, the damage that you think is done. But there could be hope because I do see changes coming in our 70s. So, what changes in our 70s? Well, there's a perspective shift I see happening, and more people are reconnecting with their brothers and sisters. And it may be that you were close to one, but not close to another. And I see that happening in my life and my wife's life also. We've connected, both of us, to one family member that, in my case, I don't even think I talked to him in 10 years. I mean, it was a long time. I'm not going into the personal details about that, but, I found people do change over time and we have reconnected and we talk every week. How about that? It is possible. But I think at this point in time in your life, you think, you know what? We can't change the past. We'll let bygones be bygones and we'll move on and see if we can establish something from here. And it's beneficial to both parties. So there are benefits from reconnecting with your brothers and sisters at this age in your 70s. Two keys to kind of help you get started if you wish. One is forgive grudges and assume the best intentions. You're not rewriting history, you know. You are just simply saying, we've been there, done that. We're not going to hold that against each other. Let's move on. We got a family history. We're related, blood related, and we're practically the same age. Got a new perspective, and let's go from there. And I think understanding forgiveness, but also understanding is people are people. We're human. Nobody's perfect. And I think when you get in your 70s, you kind of realize, how fragile humanity is, how human people are. The more, you see humanity working out over and over again. And so no need to hold a grudge. Let's pick it up and go from here. Maybe there were things in their life that caused them to act in a particular way. It could be an addiction they had, and, it could be alcohol or gambling or anything else. And that makes you crazy. I don't understand completely addictions, but I know, it really is a tough thing to encounter. And people do change. They do get over addictions finally. And the second thing is avoid comparisons and what might have been. Because, the scorecard is already completed. You know, um, it is what it is. and you have to accept that. Don't think anybody should do anything. They are who they are. If you can accept who they are and they can accept who you are, then you got a basis for a new relationship. So, how do relationships get repaired in later life, like here in the 70s? Well, it's usually not anything dramatic. People don't pick up the phone and call somebody and say, I'm sorry, or I understand, or anything like that. It's just a simple thing like sending a birthday card or being the first one to have the courage to pick up the phone and give them a call, see how they are. Maybe it's a medical procedure. That's a very common thing these days is check on someone that's undergoing a medical procedure. And if your brother or sister has something coming up, let them know that you are thinking about them. And if they need some help, let you know and check up on them. And a lot of times these days, not only phone calls, but you need to talk. You need to talk like a phone call, but texting, follow up with texting. I know so many people our age that text their brother or sister, and it usually goes like this: with my wife that got back with her brother, and they talked last night for 1 hour. Now they may not talk again for like a month, but they will be texting. He's had some back issues. He's moving. And there's some concern there. And I think they went 2 years and did not talk, not because they were mad at each other. No problem. Um, Leading their lives, and the clock kept ticking. You look up one day and you said, you know what? We haven't talked. I haven't talked to my brother for 2 years. And anyway, that has changed. I saw it change with her. She ended the conversation last night at 10 o'clock and she said, I love you. And, they're making progress. And that's good to see. A lot of times it's getting back together, sharing memories. As we said, we shared our childhood together, right? And we got stories. I'll tell you, on Mother's Day, I went over and met my two brothers for lunch, and to honor our mother. We talked about our mother, of course, and then we started talking about some other stories between us. Some memories we had, and shared those, and that was fun. That was fun, and that bonds you together. That just reminds you, you know, you were lived a life together at one time. My brother sent me a photograph. I'll show it to you right here. It's in Cherokee, North Carolina, on an Indian reservation. And I'm sitting there with my headband and my rubber spear. He's next to me. I guess I'm like 8 or 9, and he's like 4 or 5. And that had to be 68 years ago, a long time ago. We go way back. So you need to remind yourself of that, covering some of the memories. That kind of brings you back together. So that's a start, but that can keep it going, keep the conversation going. It doesn't have to be at a real fast pace, but be consistent. And sooner or later, you start to develop a better relationship. At this stage of life, I think it's better to be kind than it is to be right. We have a lot more wisdom now in our 70s. We're not looking to judge as much or compare or hold a grudge. Get past it. I mean, you know, I hesitate to say I have limited time left. I'll get schooled on that. But it is true. We are in our fourth quarter of life. And, if you're lucky enough to have a brother or sister still living and you're in your 70s or 80s, it's not going to last forever. So make up while you can, and the feeling will be much more satisfying. Your children, your adult children, are watching you. If you're able to mend some fences with a relative and kind of get back with a relationship with them, people are paying attention. Your kids are paying attention. And that sets a wonderful legacy for them to know that their parents were not fighting, with their brothers and sisters, but they had a good relationship. So that's a good example. One thing I love about these videos is the comments that you're making. Thank you very much. I think this is a good one to have a conversation about. Have you ever fallen out with one of your siblings and then got back together with them? You know, revive the relationship, if you will. How did you do that? How did that work? How did it start? And if you did try it and it didn't work, tell us about that also. Have you written anybody off and you just say, hey, that's it, no more? I'm completely sold on the idea they're not my brother or sister anymore. I wrote them off. Or if you're thinking like that, I'm just going to say, it may be wise to test things out, leave the door open, make a initial contact and see what happens. It may not work out. And if it does, that'd be great. That would be great. Both of you will feel better. Your family will feel better about it. And it's worth a try, in my opinion. It was for me. So please share your story that may encourage somebody else to take that first step and rebuild a relationship. Thank you so much for watching. This is Robert with Robert's Active Retirement.